Yep, we can share this out on the website, and I'll send this recording along with any resources we discussed today a little bit later this week. So you can look to that and rewatch this if you have find it useful and think that you want to review it again to get answers to questions that you may think of a little bit down the line but are not top of mind for you today. So I want to thank you all for joining me. I know that it is a busy time of summer getting ready for a new school year. So sparing 60 to 90 minutes might seem a little bit difficult right now, but hopefully you'll feel like your time is well spent here and you get answers to some of the questions you have about the CEP for school year 25-26. Our agenda for today includes 3 primary topics to discuss and share information about, including communicating about the community eligibility provision and the alternate income form. So you want to make sure we'll do this with families and households if you're enrolled students. We'll talk a little bit about that and give some time to answer any questions you have about the communication and the alternate income form. We'll discuss some of the reporting requirements that are different for CEP schools. So it's not additional requirements. In some ways, it's a little bit easier because of participation in the community eligibility provision. So we'll talk about a couple of those. And then we'll discuss the annual application and monthly claim submission process, which is also supposed to be a little bit easier for those buildings that participate in this provision. So we'll get started with those program administration differences that you'll be able to see or identify in comparing a traditional pricing program where you're charging students based on their individual eligibility for free, reduced, or paid price meals compared to the community eligibility provision, which provides those no-cost meals to all students enrolled in those participating school buildings. So those CEP schools do not distribute, collect, or determine any meal applications or meal application benefits. So there's no application for an individual household to complete in order for their student who's enrolled at a CEP building to receive those no-cost reimbursable meals. And with that, you're also not going to issue benefit determination letters, even for children or students who may be on the direct certification list and are identified as eligible for free or reduced price meals. That individual eligibility has no bearing on that student's access to the no-cost meals because they're enrolled at or attend a CEP school building. So you're not distributing any meal applications, you're not getting those back and making determinations on them, and you're not issuing benefit determination letters for the kids enrolled in CEP buildings. You do, however, want to maintain a current and accurate direct certification match list where you all know that's how we identify those students who participate in eligible programs that have the same income guidelines as the benefits for the school nutrition program does. That's an important piece of reporting enrollment information for the school district, where you report the students enrolled in your district and within those buildings and their individual eligibility for free or reduced price meals as part of a separate process or requirement that is not connected to participation in the National School Lunch or School Breakfast programs. Okay, so those records identify students who meet the eligibility requirements for meal benefits, but do not derive a meal benefit from that. So we have separate training identified for bookkeepers and a separate training that covers the direct certification process if you have questions about that. But essentially, it means even if you're a CEP school, you are maintaining current enrollment records in the advisor system. You will see students who are enrolled at a CEP building populate the match list when they participate in one of those eligible programs, and that's A-okay, that's good. We want that system to be in place. You want to be able to identify those students who are receiving the appropriate kinds of Medicaid, SNAP, TANF, or FDPIR. So you'll continue to do that process just like you do at your pricing buildings or like you used to do when your school operated a pricing program with the free, reduced, and paid price meals. I cannot underscore how important it is to provide communication about the community eligibility provision to the households of students attending schools that do the CEP option, especially if it's a change from what most of those students or households are used to hearing or knowing about. They need to know that even though the school participates in the CEP and that provision offers no-cost meals to the students enrolled in those buildings, right? They need to know exactly which buildings participate in that program, and they need to understand that a reimbursable meal is the one provided to their children for free. I think it can be difficult for parents or guardians, even children, to understand that a reimbursable meal offered for free does not mean that a second milk, a second entree, like an additional sloppy joe or chicken sandwich, or a milk that a student would purchase from school if they bring their lunch from home, are not reimbursable meals, right? Therefore, they are not offered at no cost. Okay, so making sure you provide early in the school year the information about what CEP means, that it provides that reimbursable first meal with all the required components at no cost to the students in those buildings, is great news for them, and also providing those additional details about a la carte purchases, second helpings of items not being part of that reimbursable meal, and therefore means that their student accounts will be charged for those things, is really important. And remembering to provide that information repeatedly throughout the school year, I think, is additionally important. It can be shocking to households or parents if they see that they are their student account is getting drained of money, or if they run a negative balance up to a certain value. Whatever value your district determines is okay. Sometimes they can get into the negative balances and not understand why that's happening, especially when their kid attends a CEP building. I thought that they weren't getting charged for meals at school. That is true. It's the full meal they're not getting charged for, but those individual pieces or parts or items that are not part of that reimbursable meal have to be charged to those accounts. So again, like I said, communicate that early and often throughout the school year. It might help prevent some angry parents, parent phone calls coming to your district. I think I've covered, everything on this slide. Yes. I want to, that last bullet point though, that says attendance at CEP buildings does not mean all students are identified as eligible for free meals. It's also an important thing to communicate with households. We'll talk more about this in that section about alternate income forms, but sometimes households have been able to receive discounts on services like internet service at home because of their students' eligibility for free or reduced price meals. Or maybe a junior or senior in high school student has been able to get a discount on taking the ACT, or maybe was eligible for a grant or a scholarship because of their free or reduced price eligibility. Their attendance at a CEP school does not determine, I'm sorry, just one moment. Sorry about that. Okay. So like I said, attendance at that CEP building does not derive an individual eligibility determination. So I'm going to talk more about how you can achieve that or provide that documentation to households here in a couple of minutes, but it's not a blanket free eligibility just because a student is enrolled at a CEP building. So we provide a sample CEP household letter that you could make available, distribute through your normal communication channels to the parents or guardians or households of students who are enrolled in CEP schools. And if you have a district that has a mixture of pricing and non-pricing buildings, then you may want to tweak this letter, make some adjustments to it, then identify exactly which buildings participate in CEP and what that means for students enrolled in those buildings versus what it means for the other buildings that continue to use the traditional pricing method. So again, we make this template available. I'll send it to you at the conclusion of today's training, and then you can make adjustments to it. But it basically covers the need to know information that you'd want to share with households of your enrolled students. And again, you can make adjustments to it as you see fit. And if you have questions about what additional information you would want to or need to provide, feel free to ask. We're here to give feedback on that. And in addition to that household letter, we also make available a template that serves as a substitute or alternate to the traditional meal benefits application. We call it the alternate income form. And we encourage you to distribute this alternate income form using the same method of communication and distribution as you would normally use for the income application for meal benefits that you would use in the pricing program. Make this available early, remind families throughout the year of its availability, because they may want some sort of documentation related to their individual students' free or reduced eligibility determination based on household size and income, for example. So some schools offer discounts on maybe a band uniform or a discount to attend school functions or activities that is based on the same income guidelines that we use in the school nutrition programs. So we continue to encourage you to use those same income guidelines, especially if it means that you can issue some sort of supporting documentation to a household that identifies that the students enrolled in that building, or that household rather, are eligible for free or reduced price meals, and gives that home, like I said, discounted internet access or access to a grant program or something like that. The one thing that our form makes sure to identify or say is that completing that form or choosing not to, or the outcome of the information provided on the form, does not impact a student's access to the no-cost meals or free meals available through their CEP building. So you cannot, the regulations prevent you from distributing a meal application in order to identify free or reduced meal eligibility to students in CEP buildings. So instead, we encourage you to use this alternate income application and make clear in that form that the outcome of completing the form has no impact on their access to those no-cost meals during the school day. Now we've got 3 reporting components to discuss, and I started or touched on this early on in the slides, that advisor reporting is really important for reporting individual student eligibility based on those direct certification matches that you're finding come across in the direct certification system. So continue to provide that enrollment information in your student information system, which about mid-September begins to automatically share enrollment info with the direct certification, with advisor. And the direct certification then uses enrollment data from advisor to identify which students are also part of the data that we receive from DHHS for those participating programs. So check that that match list frequently, once a month or so, and then make sure you're recording in your records which students are identified as eligible for a meal benefit because of their SNAP or Medicaid participation. And I said this once, I'll say it again. Do not, in your advisor data, report all students enrolled in CEP buildings as eligible for free meals. Okay, that eligibility that's reported in advisor should be done on an individual by student basis. In CEP, eligibility and participation is more on a building level. So it does not provide enough or the right kind of information to make those individual student eligibility determinations something that you should use as a blanket eligibility for free meals. You need to use that individual student eligibility information. Okay. Those of you here who are familiar with the verification report because you worked in the program for a while and you've collected meal benefit applications and you understand the process of selecting a random sample of applications you've received and have been approved for a free or reduced price meal benefit, are familiar with the reporting requirements of verification. CEP buildings and districts that do CEP in all buildings are still required to complete the report, though the verification of meal applications isn't required, right? Because you're not collecting meal benefit applications for the purpose of providing a meal benefit to students enrolled in CEP schools, there is nothing to verify. However, you still do need to complete the report by the November 15th deadline each year. So if you are a district that does CEP in all of its buildings, you do not conduct verification of meal benefit applications because they're not collected, of course, like I said. If you're a district that does CEP in some buildings and the pricing program in others, then you would still need to conduct verification for the meal benefit applications received from students enrolled in those traditional pricing buildings or pricing programs. Okay, so if you've got a mix of pricing and CEP buildings, you still would conduct verification on those meal benefit applications you receive from the students enrolled in the traditional pricing program buildings. Okay, you would not, in case a household accidentally submits a meal application and their child or children attend CEP buildings, you would not conduct verification on that meal benefit application that was submitted for a student enrolled in a CEP building. And I can totally see how that would happen, right? No fault of your own as a district with a mixture of CEP and pricing buildings. That's definitely going to happen, but you just would not include any applications for meal benefits you receive from students enrolled in CEP buildings in the pool of applications that you're randomly selecting from to conduct verification. The pool of applications that you're verifying or pulling the random sample from to verify would come only from the applications submitted for the children who attend the traditional pricing buildings and have a benefit determination made for eligibility on free reduced price meals because they completed that application for you. So when we get closer to later September, month of October, as you're conducting the verification process, probably during the month of October, and you've got questions or want to review this, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We also make verification training available. So we go through this exact scenario in that training as well, and we distribute that training via a link that you would watch on your own time as we get closer to you actually beginning the process of verification. Next, I'm going to highlight the way CEP buildings or districts would answer some of the questions, making sure to note how those things change compared to the way those questions are answered in a traditional pricing program. So in section 1, this is the same as always. No changes here. What you're reporting is based on the last operating day in October. So the last day you served meals during a school day in October are the counts that you're representing or reporting in the verification report. 1-1 letter A, column A, populates based on the number of approved site applications in your application packet for that school year. So that's not a number you would fill in. You would, however, report or fill in or type in 1-1 letter B for the number of students enrolled in all of the buildings that participate in the school lunch program as of that last operating day in October. So no real changes there. That's not a difference between pricing and non-pricing. If you've always been a pricing district, then you have skipped section 2, but because of CEP participation, you now would need to complete 2-3 in section 2. Okay, so if you are a district that has both pricing and non-pricing buildings, in this section, letter A, for 2-3, you're reporting the number of buildings that participate in CEP. And then in letter B, for question 2-3, you're reporting the total number of students enrolled in those buildings that do CEP. So if you're a district with a mixture of pricing and non-pricing, the values here in section 2 are not going to be representative of all of your districts, or I'm sorry, all of your buildings. It should not be a count of all buildings that participate in the school meals program. nor would it be a count that reflects all of the students enrolled in your district, because you need to pull out those buildings and the students enrolled that participate in the traditional pricing program. And this reflects only CEP. Other districts that do CEP in all buildings would reflect their total building count and their total student enrollment in this section, because they have no traditional pricing buildings, only CEP buildings. Okay, moving on to section 3. This asks about students directly certified as free or reduced price eligible who are not subject to verification. So check the box only if all schools and RCCIs in the SFA were not required to perform direct certification with SNAP. This would be non-base year for provision 2 or 3 or CEP for all schools. So you've got that CEP determination made, your ISP is set, you're operating that provision for up to its 4-year cycle. You would mark the box in 3-1. You are not required to perform direct certification with SNAP, though you do, because of what I said earlier about being able to identify students and their individual eligibility, because it derives other non-meal benefits, right? You would still do it, but you're not required to do direct certification for the purpose of your child nutrition or school nutrition programs. So if you have a district that does CEP in all buildings, you're going to mark box 3-1, not required to do direct certification. I'm looking at Sheila at Kearney, and they have a mixture. So a district like Kearney, where you've got some CEP buildings and some traditional pricing buildings, you're definitely doing direct certification, especially for those students in the pricing buildings. You're not going to mark this box because you are doing direct certification. Okay. And then you also would report in letter B, where I put the red circle or the red box around it, the students in this pricing, the total number of each of those categories for the students who attend the pricing buildings. Leave out those students who do not attend the pricing buildings and who attend a CEP building instead. I'm going to repeat that again because I know it's a change and it can be a little bit confusing. But if you are operating a district, or your district operates CEP in all of its buildings and all of its enrolled students get no cost meals through CEP, you're not required to do direct certification for the school nutrition program. Mark the box 3-1, and then all of the boxes in letter B are going to get grayed out, so you don't need to fill those in. That's in district-wide CEP. On the other hand, a district like Kearney, where you've got pricing and non-pricing both, you would not mark the box because you are continuing to do direct certification with SNAP in the pricing buildings. And then you would also complete the fields in letter B, where you're representing the students enrolled in those pricing buildings, pulling out any SNAP, Medicaid free, Medicaid reduced students who are enrolled in the CEP buildings. Okay, I'll move on to sections 4 and 5. In section 5, if you are a CEP-wide district, you're going to mark 5-1 because you did not collect any meal applications that needed to be or were required to be verified for the income reported on them, right? Because in a CEP-wide district, all the kids, all the students get the no-cost meals. It doesn't matter what they put on any application because you qualified as buildings or as a whole district. Therefore, you're not verifying income reported on an application. So you're going to mark the box in 5-1. You're exempt from verification. And then mark the third option in 5-2 and leave the rest of section 5 blank. Okay. If you're a district that has that mixture of pricing and CEP buildings, do not mark 5-1 because you did still conduct verification for the meal applications that were submitted from the students who are enrolled at the traditional pricing buildings. And then you're going to choose between one of the first two answers in 5-2. Okay. So if you're CEP district-wide, mark the box in 5-1, mark the third option in 5-2, and skip the rest of section 5. If you're a mixed district with pricing and CEP buildings, don't mark the box in 5-1. Pick the appropriate answer from the first two options in 5-2, and then answer the remaining items in 5-3, which will be based on the random selection of applications that you received from the students enrolled in the pricing buildings. I'll move on from that. And I know I don't expect you to keep this in your mind for the next 2 months. Like I said, we do provide written guidance, a recorded training, and some additional information to help you complete that verification report, because I know you'll work on many other things between now and then when you have to think about this again. But I wanted to make sure you're aware that there are some differences in the way that report is completed based on what kind of CEP you're operating in, all buildings versus just some. Okay. Monthly claim submission also looks different for buildings that participate in the CEP. And I won't spend a lot of time on this slide. Instead, I'll move to the next one where we can actually look at a screen that shows that individual site claim for a claim month. But all CEP buildings are required to provide breakfast and lunch both at no cost. And you're reporting much of the same information you would report using the traditional pricing method from the past, including the number of enrolled children, and then total operating days, as well as average daily attendance for both of the meal services, both breakfast and lunch. And then instead of needing to report out the number of free, the number of reduced price, and the number of paid price meals, instead it's a bit simpler because you're reporting only the total number of reimbursable breakfasts and total number of reimbursable lunches. And then the system is going to do the math to determine what percentage of each of those meals is going to be reimbursed at the free rate compared to the paid rate, which again is based on the ISP or identified student percentage value that we determined when we validated your CEP data to begin your first year of CEP operation or participation. Okay, so starting at the top in that top section, that should look somewhat familiar to you. You're used to recording the number of enrolled children, but you do not have to record or report the number of enrolled children who qualify for free and reduced and paid price meals. That's irrelevant. You really don't even, you shouldn't know that, right? We're not making those individual determinations, and the system doesn't require you to report it. You're only reporting the total number of students enrolled in that building in the month you're reporting for. So that's the first number you enter in G4. After you enter that number, then G1, G2, and G3 are going to populate with the appropriate percentages based on your ISP. Okay. And then you can move down to each of the sections that are specific to the number of meals and days of meal service for each of the programs of breakfast and lunch. So you're recording the number of operating days and the average daily attendance for each of those meal types. And then the last thing you're recording for each of them is the total number of lunch meals in L3 letter D, and then the total number of breakfast meals in N3 letter D. And you see that I crossed out all values in the reduced price meal data fields in G2, in L3 letter B, and in N3 letter B, because we don't in CEP have any meals reimbursed at the reduced rate. It's only free and paid. So you won't ever see a number populated in that reduced price meal field in any of those three locations in the claim form. And then the percentage associated with letter D for each lunch and breakfast section is going to, of course, be based on your ISP. And the percentages reported in letters A and C and A and C for both lunch and breakfast will change or adjust after you enter the total meals served. If this building, for example, had an 80-20 mix where 80% of the meals were reimbursed at the free rate and 20% at the paid rate, and you served 1,000 lunches, then after you enter 1,000 in the total lunches served text box, then the free lunches served is going to get changed to 800, 80%, excuse me, of the lunch meals reimbursed at the free rate. And then letter C, paid lunches served, is going to be automatically changed to 200, where 20% of the meals you serve would be reimbursed at the paid rate. And I know there are buildings here who have a 100% free level reimbursement rate for CEP because they have a high percentage of students categorically eligible for free meals. It made their identified student percentage 100. When you complete a claim, you're only going to see the 1,000 that you manually enter is also going to be copied as 1,000 lunch meals, for example, in the free claim category. Because all of the meals served at a building that qualifies at that high reimbursement level, that ISP of 62.5 or more, results in 100% of the meals getting claimed or reimbursed at the free rate. So whatever value you're putting in a total also becomes the same value that's copied in the free lunch category. And again, we don't reimburse any at reduced, and it would leave the paid lunches at 0% because none of your meals are getting reimbursed at the paid rate if all of them are getting reimbursed at the free rate. If you run into any issues with the claim or think that the numbers that are automatically populated in the claim don't look right after you complete your first month of operation and go to put your claim in, please feel free to reach out to me. After I manually record the number of matched students or categorically eligible or identified students and the number of enrolled students in the qualifying buildings, the system does the rest of the work to pull that information in, including into the claim. So yeah, if you think it doesn't look right, let me know. I can go back a couple of steps and make sure that we enter the numbers correctly so that it's populating your claims correctly. And I want to put on your radar looking ahead to recertifying for a new 4-year cycle if you think your district is interested in continuing CEP. And I know there are at least a couple of us in the room that are brand new to it in 2025-26. So I know you're not sure. You're waiting to see how this year goes, making sure that it's a financially viable decision to continue operating CEP. But for those of you who are in it a couple of years, it's been working well for your school, that's a great thing. And you probably know that your cycle for CEP can continue for 4 years before you would need to complete the recertification process, which is just providing to us that spreadsheet that's completed and identifies all the students enrolled in your school as of April 1st who are categorically eligible for free meals. And you don't have to do anything with that for 4 whole school years before you have to think about it again. Okay, you can submit that data to us earlier to recertify a new 4-year cycle before the 4-year cycle you're in is finished. So if it's looking like your direct cert numbers are good, maybe up just a little bit, and as in a higher percentage of your enrolled students are categorically eligible for free meals, that's a great time to recertify, even if it's before your 4-year cycle is complete. For those of you in the last year of your 4-year cycle, we notify you in the spring semester of that last year that you're ending your current cycle and here's what you need to do to recertify for the upcoming year. So maybe you're keeping track of it, but we're definitely keeping track of it and notifying you and providing you with the information you need to recertify. Okay, so you can expect to receive that communication from us when you're nearing the end of your cycle. But the point I need to make that I think is important for recertification for those of you who are in the middle of a 4-year cycle, you will not end that in the in the spring of 2026. As in the school year 25-26 is not your 4th year of the current cycle. So you could continue on, right, without having to recertify in the spring. But with potential changes coming to SNAP eligibility and participation, we can logically understand that there is a chance that the number of directly certified students for SNAP is going to decrease. That means the number of students categorically eligible for free meals through SNAP may decrease. We probably won't see that decrease until calendar year 2026. So if you are in your third year in 25-26, meaning your fourth year of CEP, your CEP cycle is 26-27, you may see a reduction in the number of students directly certified for SNAP in year 26-27. And that's going to mean a reduction in your identified student percentage, and that results in a reduction in your free claiming percentage. So that has a financial impact on your school nutrition programs, of course. And looking ahead to this, not knowing with any certainty, but anticipating that that could be a possible outcome, you may want to consider recertifying a full new 4-year cycle in the spring of 2026, even if you're not required to yet because you're not at the end of your 4-year cycle, but you may want to consider that because it can extend the CEP participation for a new additional years at a higher free claiming percentage than you may see a couple of years down the road. If we do in fact realize, or the reality of changes to the SNAP program mean that we're seeing fewer kids or students in the direct certification list for SNAP. So just wanted to put that on your radar now. We'll send communication about that in the spring semester. Just urging you to take a look at your match list, identify approximately how many students are on it, look for any changes you've seen in SNAP participation, or maybe just things you've heard from families of your enrolled students, and then use those factors to determine if you would prefer to recertify a new 4-year cycle earlier, because it may help extend your CEP participation at a more advantageous free claiming percentage than if you would have chosen to wait. Okay. I want to put my email address here, though I'm sure you all have it, or I hope you do. I can put it in the chat too. So we'll go there next to review the questions that have been put in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see all of you a little bit better. Here. Okay, I think it's just me now, right? And I'm going to check. Only 2 questions. That's awesome. For me, I don't know. Like I said, if you didn't think of questions today as we're sitting here, and I know you're absorbing a lot of information, feel free to reach out anytime. Like I said, I'll put my email in the chat here. Okay, can we use this form for summer EBT as far as submitting for students? Chris asked this question. That's a great question, and one I should have included in the slides. I think you're referring to the alternate income form, and the summer EBT regulations do not allow that to be a method by which summer EBT eligibility is determined. So students at CEP buildings or enrolled at CEP schools can be identified for summer EBT eligibility through the school in one way, and that's through their match or them being identified in the direct certification match list, or they live with a student matched for SNAP, Medicaid free or Medicaid reduced, as well as students who are identified as foster, migrant, and homeless. So yeah, some of those on all the students on the direct cert list are eligible for summer EBT, but completion of that alternate income form is not an allowable way that eligibility can be determined for summer EBT. So in that case, those students would need to complete the summer EBT application through the NDE It's a lot like a meal benefits application that they would have completed during the school year. Great question. Jan in Franklin asked, where can you find what year you're on? I'll send, it would take me a minute to like dig into the depths of my memory. I won't send you the messy spreadsheet I used to maintain these records. I know there's a way you can look it up in CNP. So I'll make sure I send instructions for how to figure out which year you're on through the CNP system, so then you can update your records and keep track of your 4-year cycle as well. That's a good question. I better write it down. And then I'll get to the next question. Shelley and Skylar, do we still complete the civil rights summary form in November? And that's the form you complete alongside verification. That's a good question. I'll put that in my written guidance too. Honestly, I have to refresh my memory on it. So I wrote that down. Thank you for asking that question, Shelley. I'll put it in the questions and answers generated from this session when I send the recording and other resources out. Amber in Scottsbluff asked, if we have CEP buildings turn in the free and reduced application, do we just write CEP on the application and keep a copy? This is a question and answer that has some nuance, Amber, and it's a good one to ask. There, I'm guessing in mixed districts, Scottsbluff is another that's like Kearney, where you have some pricing buildings and some non-pricing buildings. And this also is like it can take an offshoot to summer EBT eligibility too, to kind of respond to Chris from above. But Chris, you're in a district that's entirely CEP. So what I'm going to answer might not necessarily apply to you, but it would apply to Scottsbluff and Kearney that have these mixture of CEP and pricing buildings. It's definitely possible, and I think likely, that a household with a student in a CEP building and a pricing building submit one application with all of their students on it. In that case, you're definitely going to process the application, make a determination, because those students who are identified in that application and attend a pricing building do need to have that determination made for their free or reduced price meal eligibility during the school year. Okay. And I like a little offshoot here onto summer EBT, that technically does qualify even the CEP attending students in that application with other pricing building students eligibility for summer EBT. We can talk about that more as we approach summer EBT next spring though. But yeah, determine that application if it has a mixture of pricing and non-pricing students on it. If that application has entirely CEP students on it, don't process it. What did you record? Write CEP on it and keep a copy. Yeah, you could keep the copy just in case some question comes up from the household later. But I also would add to that to issue something to the household saying that, you didn't need to complete this application in order for your student to receive the free meals offered through the building they attend that participates in CEP. But if you completed the application in order to identify their eligibility for some other purpose, the things we talked about earlier, a discount for something through school or even outside of school, please complete this alternate income form. We'll make a determination on that. And then if you need documentation from us about the determination, us being you at the school, then you can provide them with that. So I would do two things: follow up with them, tell them they didn't need to complete that because their student gets free meals because they attend a CEP building, and then offer them the opportunity to complete the alternate income form if they need individual student documentation of eligibility that meets the income guidelines for the school meals program. That was a good question. I'm following up on yours, Shelley. Where do you find the alternate income form, Jeanette? Yeah, you're new to the program. Welcome to the CP family at Verdigree. I will send you that template when I provide the answers to the questions that have been asked today. So you'll get that from me in an email. Katie asked about that in household letter from Mullen. Yeah, please feel free. If you think it looks good, just update the dates on it to make it appropriate for the current school year and you're good to go. You don't need to send it to me to get approval or anything like that first. Good question. And another question from Katie and Mullen. They just added a public preschool. Do all the rules apply for preschool kiddos as it does for K through 12? And do I include them in my CEP count and in your claims? That's a really good question. More schools have added preschool, so this is a really common question we've been getting. Those preschool age students, I think I'm going to answer the question here. And if I don't, make sure to, like, I don't know, re-ask me a different way or something like that. But if those preschool aged kiddos attend school in a partial or full day, I'm guessing maybe it's 2 half days or a half day, maybe not a full day. But if they attend school and during their school day, they can, the meal time is happening and meal time is part of their day, then they would also be able to receive those meals at no cost, assuming they're reported in your school's enrollment, right? They're enrolled students, just like a K through 12 would be. If that's all the case, they're enrolled in your school, the meal time happens during their planned school day, then yes, definitely include them, give them access to the meals at no cost, and then include them in your monthly count for meal service. If they're eating in a classroom of their own, then that classroom teacher, or at least a helper of some kind, needs to use a roster that identifies which kids, not a roster, that's for pricing program. The classroom teacher or helper would need to use at least a tally sheet to record that they watched 10 kids that day get lunch, for example. Then that tally sheet would need to go back to the bookkeeper for when they consolidate the records or the total reimbursable meals that can be included in the claim for the month. And then that daily tally sheet of the meal count of the preschool kids would be maintained with the rest of the school nutrition program records. Katie, did I answer your question?
Kinda, yeah. The younger kids will come early and like they'll eat breakfast only. And then
Yep.
our older kids will eat lunch
Okay.
only. And
Yep.
then I'm not sure how our enrollment is going to look like
Okay.
because, it's new to us, so I don't know if they're going to be in power school. I mean, it would be easier for me if they were for like claims and stuff.
Yeah.
So I have yet to talk to admin and stuff. I have an email. I was waiting until after this Zoom so that I can kind of get all my details and stuff for that.
Okay.
So I was just wondering. And then another question, I guess, do I have to, being we added that and we have other kids, do I need to reapply for CEP?
No, that's a good question. They're part of that elementary school building.
Yes.
I'm guessing, yep, yep. It's not an additional building that you're trying to add, so you don't need to do anything to update CEP. But
Awesome. Thank
after
you.
you know the final answer on that enrollment question, I'm assuming they're going to be enrolled in the district. I mean, that's how it is in almost every case that I've.
And they have like their own state number and everything. They do everything.
Exactly.
It's the same.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep. Then they can eat those meals through the CEP. So
Awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, of course. Yep. Yeah. If you have any other questions or the folks you talk to make this decision have questions we didn't answer today, just send me an email or we can set up time to chat with a larger group if you'd like to. Good question. Grace in, I think, Papillion La Vista. I've learned over the years, like, this is a side note completely, but when I started here 12 years ago, I was always like, how do you know whose name goes with where? But now I understand how it happens. It's just over time, you learn these things. It's like flashcards in my head. Okay, Grace, back to your question. Is it still the same process that CEP sixth graders moving to seventh grade that are non-CEP schools get the 30-day grace period in their seventh grade school year? And yes, that is the case. We can allow the 30 days of carryover from their previous school year participation, receipt of free meals through a CEP building to do up to 30 operating meaning school days where meals were served, up to 30 days of that free meal status goes with them to the new non-CEP school building in the new school year. If a newer determination is made prior to that 30th operating day, then you would obviously update their eligibility to match whatever that newer determination is. But you're correct on that, Grace. Good question. And Jeanette, yes, it is safe to say your school is locked in for 4 years. Yep, that's totally true. You do not have to make any changes. You continue to offer no-cost meals for the 4-year cycle. It could change only if your school wants to stop participating in the program. So that's happened a couple of times in the past where a school tries it for a year and decides it's just not working for them. And then they switch back to the traditional pricing method after only 1 year, and that's okay, but you are locked in for 4. There's nothing I could do or anything like that that would cut the 4-year cycle short for you. That would be a decision your school makes. And you're not clueless, by the way. This is all new information to you, so I'm glad you asked. Yes, Chris, I will send out the template letter that you can send to families. Feel free to make some adjustments to it or add information if you'd like to. And if you want me to review it, you can, but I don't have to review it before you send it out. If we are a CEP building, do we have to do certification every year or every 4? That's a great question. You have to do it every 4 years, but you could do it more frequently, but I would recommend that only if you're seeing more students or a higher percentage of students categorically eligible for free meals, as in more students on the direct certification list. So, and I would recommend it when that happens because it's probably a more advantageous percentage of meals or higher percentage of meals getting claimed at the free rate. But if you're not seeing that, then you absolutely are not required to recertify any more frequently than every 4th year. Mary asked, can we use a tally sheet or do we need to mark each specific child who eats? You can use a tally sheet or a clicker, right? Or something simplified, which is one of the benefits of doing CEP. It makes that administrative work and some of the operational work just a little bit easier when it comes to counting reimbursable meals. Do whatever's easiest for you, of course, but because you're not reporting a number of meals served to students based on their individual eligibility, as in not based on a number of meals served to free eligible kids and reduced priced and paid. Instead, you are reporting total meals served to all kids. That means you can use a simplified method for meal counting. As long as the person, the staff member, is still located at the end of the meal service line, where they can review that plate or tray and make sure it has all the required components for a reimbursable meal, then yeah, that meal count can be simplified. It still has to be at the end of the meal service line. Okay. And remember too, that you want to have something set up where you can record, if needed, the purchase of those a la carte items. A second milk, for example, or someone going back up to get a second helping of something from the hotline, or a second entree. I think I used chicken sandwich as an example. Or even the kids who bring lunch from home but may want to buy an a la carte item, like a milk or something like that. You got to have some way of recording when those things are happening, because those are purchases that need to be paid for through those individual student accounts. Sheila asked, do we have a template for districts like Kearney who have some CEP and non-CEP schools to send to families who have students in both types? The answer is no, but I will update the letter we have and make one that fits like the Scottsbluff and Kearney and Omaha Public and LPS2, Lincoln Public Districts. Or I can see also what those other ones that haven't been mixed for a while have been using, and we could borrow some of that language. But happy to make that for you. I can send it to you by Friday, and then you can make some adjustments to it or provide feedback to me to help me make it better for others in your circumstances or situation in the future. That's a good request. Thank you for thinking of that one, Sheila. Any other questions from folks in the room? Anyone want to unmute or type your question? I'll keep what you've typed and use it to finalize the frequently asked questions that I'll send out at the conclusion of the week. So like I said earlier, just in case you missed it, we're recording this. I will send the link to this recording along with an alternate income form template that you can use. a template for a household letter that you can use to go with that alternate income form and to just send out early in the school year or before school starts. And then use the language from that letter to provide some perhaps regular reminders to households. Especially important that they understand that a la carte items are not free. Okay. And I'll make a revision to the household letter that is a good fit or hopefully better fit for the districts that have a mixture of pricing and non-pricing buildings to help explain to families who have kids in both what it means for them. Did I forget anything I promised you? Well, you'll let me know, I think. So that's a good thing. You keep me accountable. I appreciate that. It looks like we've got one more question. If you are a CEP school that provides free meals, a child wants seconds, can we do that? Yes, you can totally do that. You don't have to report it to us. You would just need to record it somewhere in your point of sale system that student purchased a second entree, for example, and that their account was charged for that item. They can make unlimited like visits to the fresh fruit veggie bar, if I'm remembering correctly. But those items that you're putting a price on or that you normally would have had a charge price for in the traditional pricing program need to stay. Like keep those prices, update those prices every year to reflect the actual cost of the food and any labor associated with preparing them. But those are the kinds of things you would continue to charge for, just like you would have in the traditional pricing program. So I hope that answers the question. Second milk would be the same. Yep. It always has a price. I'm guessing in the neighborhood of 50 cents these days. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but you would continue to charge that price for any individual milk that was purchased or any milk purchased outside of the reimbursable meal that already includes a milk. But the kid will have to pay to who? Yeah, the student would pay the school, and that money essentially would go back into the food service account because that's the funds that incurred the cost to buy the milk, for example, or incurred the cost to pay the staff to prepare the meal and the extra entree item that student might have purchased. So they could pay with cash, they could have the money pulled from their account. There's a couple of ways I think that can be done. And again, that money is going to be deposited back into the food service account because that account's funds are the ones that were used to procure or purchase the menu item or meal item or a la carte item that they wanted more of or wanted as not part of the full reimbursable meal. Oh yeah, Pat, I will send a copy of the slides. Yes, that's one thing I forgot to say. Yeah, the slides we went through today that accompany the video. Great, I'm glad you pointed that out. Thank you. Oh, you're not sure what you'll be doing for the process. Yeah, Pat, after you get the chance to watch the full video start to finish and have those slides sitting next to you, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email address in the chat one more time. You can help make sure you feel comfortable with getting CEP going at your building. Yeah. Or continuing it. It might be that case. Yes, please call me later to chat more about this. I'm out all day tomorrow at NDE Day as part of Administrator Days. And then on Thursday, I'm going to the school nutrition programs training that we host on site. It's here in Lincoln, but I will be back regular work in the office on Friday. So if you want to send me an email, we can set up a time on Friday or another day next week to chat. You're also welcome to call me anytime. Most of you probably know this. I'm hard to reach on the first call, usually because I'm in some meeting of some type, but we'll definitely try to get you called back. So if it's better for you to know when you can actually get an answer from me and you want to talk on the phone, feel free to send me an email and say what's a good day and time, or here's what I have available. Can you pick one of these and call me, Katie? And then yes, we can do that as a way to plan so you know by when you can get info you need from me. Okay, sounds like we're winding down and finishing up for today. So I gotta say thanks again for your time and attention today. I really appreciate the questions everyone asked. I think it helps everyone in the room learn. And hopefully if you saw a familiar name in here or even an unfamiliar one, just someone who asked a good question or sounds like they know what they're talking about and have those questions maybe you wouldn't have thought of, that you can remember that name and then reach out to them if you ever need to. I think that having that little network of people who go through the same things you do is really valuable and very important. So hopefully a couple of you can gain that from this. And again, like I said, we'll send out all the resources, the slides, the recording, the templates we have available. And I'll go through the chat and record the questions and the answers I provided, and we'll send that as well. So if you need anything from us in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out. But I wish you a really great last few weeks of summer break and an awesome start to a new school year. So thanks for your time today.